Title up there is pretty emotional. It's just emo. But I thought I want to talk about toys, but saying like I like toys doesn't make for a very attractive title. But maybe it fits in with this year's theme. Wait, no, go there. Sweet. Hello, I'm Jimmy, and my imposter syndrome is at an all-time high right now. But thank you for having me, and what a great day so far. I hope you're enjoying your GCAPs. I wanted to talk this year because I was very moved last year, and it had a big impact on me as a person. So I felt I had a debt to pay, and this is the payment. So hopefully there's some value in my presentation. I'm usually quite reclusive. Usually I just let the broth speak for itself. I don't care if you know I don't care if you know I made the game or you didn't, or you don't know I made the game. As long as you enjoyed the game, that's what I care about. I want to contribute to this, so I hope what I have to say is interesting. Yeah, I love making games. I think the best way to help people smile is through interactive activity. That's my favorite passion. That is my drive to entertain people, put smiles on faces. They can put frowns on faces if they want. Depends on the output and the product that you're making. But as long as there's some kind of like really good enjoyment that people, number one, can experience, number two, they want to pay for. That is important. This is still a business. I started working at Chrome Studios in 2005, and I worked on these games, and I loved them. I loved the experience. This was my kind of first little go make games. We'll let you make some. And that was a very incredible experience. Then I moved to New Zealand. No, don't do that. 1, 2, perfect. I moved to New Zealand and then I started working for Pickpock. Pickpock has an interesting history because it started out as a company called She, which is spelled S-I-D-H-E. Thanks, guys. And they were a great New Zealand company, but at the kind of advent or apex of mobile, they really wanted to find a space for that. And so I submitted an application to be their kind of, not first mobile game designer, but definitely one of the mainstays. And that was some of the best times of my life. I enjoyed everything I worked on. I touched a lot of stuff, and I helped make really good games. It's just a handful of what I've made, or worked on, or helped, and build, and foster. One of my drives at Pickpock was that I never wanted to let what happened to Chrome happen anywhere else. So I worked really hard. But I've been making toys and games since I was 10. And now I've worked in the industry like 13 years. Maybe finally, like I feel like, oh good, I'm starting to get a grasp with this. I'm finally like a beginner. And I say that not as like a slight against anything. I say that as I want to keep making games until I'm like 80, because I can't wait for my dementia to kick in and the amazing bullshit I'll say out loud. So what like caused me to make games, apart from like putting smiles on people's faces? That's kind of like a modern idea. Maybe like over the last couple of years, that's what I figured out. Oh, that was my passion. Well, what kind of kicked it off? I like this transition, by the way. Oh no, it didn't. Did it work? Is that Tom Hanks? I saw that movie when I was like 8 or something like that. And it was the first time. Do you guys know the plot of Big? It's pretty obnoxious. There's a wish, and the kid gets older. But the most amazing thing is that he works for a toy company. As an 8-year-old, you don't know how the world works. And then suddenly, this movie just says, someone makes your toys. They are designed. And then I wanted to be a toy designer. And then this guy came along. And suddenly, you could play with the toys, and the toys could play back. And this was amazing. And so now I wanted to make video games. And it was around this time we got like a family computer, and I just started programming. And all the games I made from like 10 till 20 or whatever were just rubbish. But that was my learning. That was like, oh, how do I do this? I didn't pay attention in high school. I slept, and then I went home and made games. They all thought I was a bit silly. But who's laughing now? One of the things that I got growing up was that no adult in my life believed that this was a thing, so there was no structure. The structure was just me being belligerent. And it turned into a healthy obsession, I guess. This is pretty much all I do. I make games and I drink beer, and I swear a lot. Fuck yeah. Why am I talking about toys? Maybe it's confusing when we make games, but I find that toys, well, the way I interpret them, are often the jewel of the games industry. A good toy makes a lot of games. A good set of toys make great games. Toys are genre defining, but I find it rare that people or developers talk about toys in this way. Everyone kind of wants to rush to the game bit without kind of exposing the first principles. So what is a toy? I like to see it as a schema of how things work. Schemas are our mental models of how we perceive the world. I would prefer to speak about toys as, wait, I'm going to wait for that. Just one second. I'm definitely not talking about this, although that would be pretty rad. Because that, you know, he died once, he died for me, it's all good. I'm not talking about this. That's actually my favorite toy of all time. Everyone I work with knows I bought one for the office, and if you're sitting around a meeting table and if you've got one of those on there, you can't help but just keep trying to put the square block in the round hole. It will work. But I am kind of talking about that. So what is a toy? I like to see it as this. Any disruption to an otherwise inert object that must come to a resolution. That means it has no behavior of its own, and its behavior is bestowed by another force. Breathe. You guys still with me? You're all good? Yeah. I really like this quote by Sid Meier, and it's kind of, I might have paraphrased it, or the source was paraphrased, or maybe it's accurate, but I like the way he tried to sum up what a game is in the most succinct way that's kind of applicable to all games. It's just a series of interesting decisions. It is my favorite way to describe a game, but it's like the most vague bullshit ever. I find that there's not like a similar way to talk about making games. There's no like succinct quote, and I would dare not try to put that out there as like, this is the stamp and let's go. But it's always kind of like, let's get the art and the code and the magic and just shove it somewhere, and then there we go, it's done. So Wheelwright often talks about mental models, and I think he does that because it's quite like a layperson's term, because the other word is schema, and that can mean a variety of things. But how do we make something that makes schemas? That's what we have to imagine. A schema is like an idea about how things work, the way we receive it, what I'm trying to really nail about toys. So this isn't verbatim, but I would like to say sometimes the act of making a game is the act of measuring toys. That is the only pun I will make this week. When I say game in this context, I mean it as an abstract. I do not mean the labor that goes into making a video game. I do not mean video game. I mean just the abstract concept. So what does that mean? What does this statement mean? And I just kind of thought of it like 10 minutes ago. I didn't write this presentation 10 minutes ago. Why did I just put that slide in there? It's attempting to constrain the use of a toy by measuring specific axes of behavior that impart an importance on the person's, or otherwise, it might be a dog, participating in play in a way that has a meaningful outcome. It means that you're trying to establish rules, but instead of just having arbitrary rules just because, like of something, you now kind of have this soft/hard evidence about why that rule exists and kind of justifying why the rule exists. You're establishing rules so that the toy can lead to a goal, an accomplishment, a feel-good moment for people playing. And that all sounds pretty vague, so I've got some bad art for you. It's my tennis ball example. Two people throw the ball to each other. Well, that's not a game, you're just playing with a toy. It's pretty cool. Everyone enjoys that. Watch, you ready for this animation? Oh my God. But maybe we can start turning it into a game. Maybe we can start measuring this toy. So let's measure successful catches. They've caught the ball once each. Isn't that quaint? Maybe people can start exploiting this. So maybe we need to start measuring a way that stops people being assholes, so that you can't intentionally bounce the ball on the ground. Maybe the catches have to be caught without bouncing. So we can measure bounces. Maybe we can develop a behavior that promotes good throwing rather than poor throwing. Maybe we can start measuring the distance thrown. Maybe we can start allowing players to kind of make up their own difficulty and their own challenges. And they start like inventing a strategy about how to throw the furthest with the least bounces and the most catches. We allow them to develop a schema or mental model about how this play works. And all we've done is just start measuring a tennis ball. Maybe you could even reward for the longest distance thrown. So it's like, I get an extra ribbon because I threw it 5 meters instead of 4, because my friend could only throw it 4 meters. But people don't want to throw forever, so we need to put in, maybe we need to measure the amount of time they throw for. Maybe we can encourage players to have kind of clutch moments or desperation, or something entertaining, something that allows them to invent more things in their head about how this silly little toy works. Finally, we need to provide a key measure so that players can compare outside of the activity. Maybe this is a growing idea. Maybe this is finally a sport. It is a sport, it's just tennis. But they have different measures. They measure differently. They have more toys. But I needed to keep this example simple because it's also really contrived, but that's okay. What I'm trying to say is that interesting use of toys birth industry. And I think that's really important. But it's really difficult to go like, I have a ball, and now I have Wimbledon. That is a really difficult leap. So I'd like to try and break it down. First, we have this there's normally a breakthrough, a discovery about like what it is. I'll get to some more concrete examples after this vague shit. But it's like a design or designs for toys. They're usually disruptive, but I like the word breakthrough. It's like it broke through some like a layer, and people have discovered it. But you could also interpret it as disruptive. And sometimes it captures an audience, sometimes it doesn't, but it's better when it does capture an audience. And the toys are normally complementary and presented in a complete suite called a game. There might have been examples before the breakthrough, but there's usually like a clear outlier. A recent example might be something like Flappy Bird. It was a breakthrough. It's just like everyone got it, everyone understood it. It was a fascinating toy, everyone played it. There was lots and lots of little things. Just the little bird, I'm not talking about the game, but that little bird was measured really well. Quick turnarounds of replayability. An easy mechanic, you just hold it with one hand and you tap the screen and you try and get it through as many clear holes and without hitting obstacles. People loved it. It was a sensation. Gesundheit. Then we get into this weird phase. We get into the overt plagiarism phase. That's a really nasty way to say it, but I mean it with the best intentions, of where people are trying to learn about the breakthrough, so they mimic it. They're just like, I will do this. And the reason why I said Flappy Bird before, even though there are countless examples of this, is because of the amount of imitations. It became meme level. Like there was so many Flappy Bird inspired titles that hit the App Store like a week after its launch, or a week after its breakthrough. There's a difference there. But this is kind of like developers understanding how this new thing works. I'm not saying Flappy Bird was new, but it was definitely new. Most importantly, developers are trying to capitalize on the novelty while an audience is still there. There might be a dark side to that. There are like vultures everywhere you go. People will imitate. And they do this because the customers, the audience, the people, they're confused about the level of quality or craft that really fits the toys. It could be a good one, it could be a bad one, but no one knows yet because there's no comparative examples yet. There's no concrete, there's no like, oh, this is how to make this. But what's really happening is developers are trying to standardize the play about what this new thing is. And then we get into genrefication. Developers start adding sophistication to the original breakthrough. And this is where a genre might establish itself around the toy. This enables people to access different ideas or behaviors about the toy, where the toy inherently doesn't change too much, but the expressions made with the toy change significantly and allow for wider reaching audience, or allow people to reach wider audiences, or at least carve out portions of their audience, an audience for themselves, an audience that really likes that toy. This is kind of my favorite bit, the industrialization of a genre. If the genre can increase its audience by itself, there's a chance that the toy might have an industry built around it. And I think that's incredible. Like, how much is the first-person shooter industry worth? Like, it's heaps. Like, you don't need to make anything else, just make FPS. Which is why I'm going to talk. Wait, I have one more slide, I'm sorry. It's kind of like the lifespan of the toy development, but It is reductionist, and I admit that. These are complex things, but I think if we can kind of put them in a nice little map, then we can kind of say toy development is valuable instead of game development, or not instead of, but, or not in place of, but more, there is a reason to focus on toy development. Okay, I want to talk about these guys because this is a clear-cut example of what I want. I've never worked for id, I have no affiliation, but their games make really clear examples for why I like toys. So you have the breakthrough. And this is Wolfenstein 3D, if you have not played it. There are examples before this of 2D first-person games. There are examples of more 3D vector first-person games. There are examples of other things, but this captured a wide audience. I'd be happy to flip a coin about Wolfenstein or Doom, which one was the breakthrough, but I'm going to go with Wolfenstein because it just made a better presentation. Wolfenstein has two main toys. It has a camera for movement and a tool for reaching into the environment. That tool reaches along the z-axis, or implied z-axis, especially in Wolfenstein. In this case, it is a sniper-style weapon. Every single weapon is a sniper-style weapon. Doesn't matter if it's the chain gun or the machine gun or the pistol or the knife. They all are one shot. They do not vary. They just go straight. There is also a tool for interacting with the world, trying to find doors, but essentially this is built on the same toy. Can I reach into the world? On top of that, we have the camera movement. Camera movements, it was great for a keyboard. You can strafe left and right, you can move backwards and forwards, and you can turn around. You can turn around on one axis. And this allowed people to play. They're allowed to navigate and explore and reach things, and then they can use their other toy, their reaching toy, and reach things and navigate an environment. They can shoot at targets. The reaching toy for opening doors is very short distance. The gun is almost infinite. You can shoot a target over there. And these are two very cool things. This is also kind of an easy way to reduce like what you're playing with. And when I talk about toys in this instance, I am talking about this idea of like the screen, the keyboard, and the game itself all merging as one schema in your mind. So this is the toy. It's kind of like the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. Again, with what I was mentioning before about measuring toys, Wolfenstein tracks your health, your ammo, your lives, your score. This is all based around how you move and how you can reach out into the world. These are just simple kind of measures. It measures time, it measures secrets, it measures enemies, and it tests your ability by highlighting these measures clearly. You can see on its HUD, you're at level 1, your score is 0, your lives are 3, your health is 100%, your ammo is 8, you're carrying this gun. When you finish a level, I don't have a screenshot for the level, when you finish a level, there's like a, how did you do during level 1? But this enables the discovery of strategy. Maybe my score needs to be higher, maybe I need to take less hits, maybe I can improve how I utilize the camera or play with the camera and the guns in order to not get hit. That's probably advisable. If your health drops down to 0, you'll have to start the level again. After Wolfenstein broke through, we did go into the overt plagiarism stage. So if you look at the screenshots, which game is which? They all have the same HUD, they all have the same tools, they all have the same camera. There are mild differences. Some had a nice y-axis, some did not. But do you remember when first-person shooters were just called Doom clones? They didn't know what to call it until later. Maybe they did. When I say overt plagiarism here, I just mean the toys. I don't mean the art, the literature, the code, or anything like that. Nothing was stolen. But they were trying to work out how to use those toys. You could also replace the word toy with tool, but that doesn't describe what happens in the mind of a player. And we move into the genrefication. We've gone from these Doom clones into first-person shooters. We have different stuff come out. We have more storytelling. Like we have Half-Life with an interactive narrative. No one had ever seen that before. We have Unreal with its unparalleled graphics at the time. It was a marvelous game. It had great gameplay, had great enemies, had a great story. It had a Medal of Honor with its like movie-like quality. No one had really kind of been like, oh, I feel like I'm in a movie before. And this was all enabled by, these simple technology and toys coming out. We have Sin with its AI and non-linear levels. And we have Turok being an early first-person shooter on a console with a unique control behavior, or unique control scheme. But then from there, we have moved into kind of the industrialization. Of course, you can just use the first-person stuff. So the games are Rust, which is a survival game. There's Minecraft, there's Call of Duty, there's Fallout 4, there's Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and there's Overwatch. All of these are completely different experiences based on a 25-year legacy that id set up. Well, they didn't set it up, but it just felt good. And this is because your audience grows. People start playing shooters in the 90s or whatever, and they demand better experiences. They're like, oh, I like this, but I'd like it if this happened. And then markets grow, and they come out, and people can do stuff like this. I find it absolutely enthralling and incredible at all points. I would like to mention that during this phase, new technologies are created that help expand the industry and create new breakthroughs. But if we look at its catalog, they're not really, are they a game company? They look like a first-person shooter company. They really kind of like knuckled down and made some really great process, and they did it from 2 toys. 2 of them. They've helped create that 25-year-old industry. Wait, I said that backwards. I'd like to say that again. They helped create a 25-year-old industry around 2 simple things, a camera and an interaction tool. Can I move the camera and can I reach into the world? Very simple, but completely usable principles. It's another breathe. That one's just for me. But are you guys okay as well? Real good? Yeah, that's the water. The reason I've come is separating like the game industry and like trying to make an argument for that there is industries within. It's because it's such a broad term and it's not always descriptive of what you are trying to do or who you're trying to entertain. Like, can you come into the game industry and just be like, I'll make any game? It's probably not the best strategy. But I think the game industry is far too complex for a simple chat. Maybe it's even a bit complex for, like, this is where I want to do business. But maybe your business can use part of the game industry to sell products. Maybe your business is just one game. Everyone wants a retained audience. Toy design can often be left out, and many concepts simply borrowed. Get into kind of broken experiences. These are 3 games. They're excellent. It's Call of Duty Heroes, Star Wars Commander, Transformers, Earth Wars. They're all excellent, but I bring this up as a contemporary idea, or contemporary games that use a very, very sophisticated process. They take someone's toy, and they take someone's IP, and they put them together. And that's how they make excellent games. The original, the breakthrough, or maybe part of the genre, has already captured the audience for them. Now they're capitalizing on it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's been a 30-year practice. It's been around since the advent of video games. It has always happened. Someone comes up with cool toys. Someone goes, I'm going to stick my face on it. But sometimes it's not just marketing. It's very valuable. Some of the best games are like intellectual property that has not been birthed from the game itself. But if you notice that this is even more of a contemporary measure, the industry moves so fast. Look how big these games are now. They're incredibly massive, and it's like, my question is, perhaps invention doesn't pay the bills, so toy design gets left behind. Toy design is expensive. But then why do we have the biggest entertainment industry on the planet? We work in an industry where imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And that is a good thing, because that's how we all learn and grow. Because toy development is hard. But we essentially do it all the time. But we probably don't do it from the start, the initial inceptions, the first principles, the breakthrough. We probably do it in the genre where it's just safer. It's safer to invest. It's safer to practice. It's safer to make mistakes because there are better examples out there. There are worse examples out there. You can learn from them. People like proven ideas. Developed ideas and proven concepts. But I will go back to genrefication creates industry. And toy creation leads to genre creation. Being able to identify a large audience that near unanimously says, I like playing with these toys, that's really powerful. Just a quick sidebar. This is one of my favorite all-time quotes, and it explains people significantly. There is no perfect spaghetti sauce. There are perfect spaghetti sauces. That's by Howard Moskowitz. Moskowitz. I might have to read this. He's a cool guy that worked for Campbell's, was it? It was Campbell's. Someone fill me in. But the problem was, he discovered that people like 3 pasta sauces: plain, chunky, spicy. He made like 46 different pasta sauces and did an excellent test. You should look him up, but my talk isn't about Howard. The problem was that no one thought of making chunky pasta sauce before, because people weren't eating it, because people didn't know it existed. My point is that it's difficult, maybe impossible, to imagine something that doesn't exist. People don't know what they want until it exists, because how could they? Choice implies the difference between 2 or more things. But if you only have an existing thing and a non-existing thing, there's only one thing. And it's the same in business. It's difficult to make a business around a non-existent product, which is why so many businesses are reluctant to introduce brand new concepts. So sometimes someone has to show you the toys exist. Someone has to show you how to build, use, and measure the toys. But as a result, sometimes people rush to the make game bit. They want to press the make game button. I know, I do it all the time. Just press, just go. But I do love the labor of making games. Sometimes people want the kind of They want the Thelma and Louise driving off the cliff without any of the storytelling to justify why they drove off a cliff. They don't realize that you have to make the rest of the story. And people can do this faster than ever thanks to the gentrification of technology. That's a mouthful. So what now? As technology becomes gentrified, skill sets become broader. So if you've just started making games today, you have so many things to choose from. Technology has become so accessible. Your game can have social network platforms, it can have in-app purchases, it can have referrals, it can be on so many different platforms, all at the kind of like, with a simple kind of, oh, just put the Facebook SDK in, and then it's probably about 3 days of pulling your hair out, but it's very low code. You can just do it, you can do it, rather than inventing the social network platform yourself. You have access to it, you have access to renderers, you have access to all of these things that didn't exist or were really hard to do in the 90s, in the 80s, excuse me, or in the 2000s even. Now, you just kind of make the game. Oh, I'll make the game. But there's caveats to this. So the skill sets become broader. More demand is put on you to know all of these things. But do I have to know it? Do I have to know all these 20 different things? Can't I specialize? So this is crap, but I did an anecdotal survey. So this is not real data. Please don't have a post that this is real data. This is like 100 people, and 100 developers. But I wanted to ask people, are you a game designer? But is your job title game designer? And the graphs are damning. People are like, yep, I'm a game designer. Is your job title game designer? No. I don't think that it's really evident, but what I'm trying to say is that people are doing game design all the time. It's quite a diverse skill set, but there's no real kind of, there is a discipline, but the stuff you do is quite broad. So you will be a game designer, or you do make games, but you also do these other things. And then I asked, the title says it all, the amount of design in a game doesn't come out of one discipline. Those big 4 brackets, respectively, are programming, concept design, user experience, and art production. But I did ask people about any pocket of skill set that they wanted to, that they said, yep, this is what I specialize in, this is what I like doing. They could answer it. People that took the survey could only answer this with one answer. They had to choose, they had to say, I specialize. Because if they could choose 2, then is that specializing? So I have a thing. The word genre, it was brought up in a talk, right, in one of the fireside chats, of how in film we describe the kind of narrative or emotional context of the movie and say that's an action movie or that's a romance or whatever. But in games we don't have that. We have genres defined by their toys or tools or their interactions or their behaviors. So perhaps this question needs some refinement, but I would like to just point out the large portions of that graph. The largest population was other games, because I probably didn't explain the question right. Next are action games, role-playing games, and simulation games. Those are the largest chunks of that graph. This is what I identified as the amount of skills in game design, pure labor skills. Can't even read that. Would you like me to read it out? Abilities, animation, artificial intelligence, asynchronous gameplay, behavior, cameras, controls, combat, cooperation, competition, dialogue, difficulty, economy, enemies, environment, esports, inventory, items, levels, multiplayer, navigation, narrative, non-player characters, physics, player character, procedural generation, progression, puzzles, quests, rewards, sharing, social, story, toys, trade, traps, tutorials, user interface, weapons, and other. Because it was very difficult to capture everything. But how could you do all of that? What I'm trying to say is that, like, we have a giant amount of specialization in the industry, and you really you can't do everything. But you can, thanks to the gentrification of technology. But should you? What I want to know is, where are the toy designers? This is why I think toy design is important. It does create new genres, it creates new marketplaces, it creates new audiences. And I think it's important to define it as a specific skill set. It's my favorite picture that I found when I was researching. A toy is an abstract that helps us to explore and understand our world. So while a physical or virtual representation of the toy might exist, the schema of the toy can only exist in your mind. That's how it works. That's what's fascinating about stuff. A toy schema enables play in a video game. I'll go back to the FPS analogy. Move to position, control the camera, aim, control the camera, but with the slight advantage of knowing where your reaching tool is, and fire some missiles at the motherfucker across the world. I didn't mean that. Toys are why we play games. They are your genre, they are your industry. The big game industry is not what I'm referencing. I'm referencing the amount of technology and decisions that you have to make within your product. They inform your rules and obscure your goals. They're disruptive as they are fluid, but they are everywhere. From the button on a menu to the marionette in a fighting game. Does that make any sense, marionette in a fighting game? Like, you control a puppet, and you want Ryu to punch, it's a marionette. Same with Super Mario, everything like that. That's how I'm being reductionist again, but that's how I see it. To AI and RTS, to the person across the country you are shooting. If the toys aren't good enough, or measured correctly, or built properly, then how do you expect people to build schemas out of them in their minds? How do you expect to have a stable business? I want to see more toys. I want to see deeper and better toys. I want to see worse toys. I want to see simpler toys. I just want more of them. And I hope you do too. Hopefully I've covered what specific toy development is capable of, or maybe I haven't, but that's okay. I had fun. Thank you. Love from Jimmy.